broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Houston, Texas. It's time for Houston Business Radio. Now, here's your host.
Hello, Houston. Trisha Stetzel here, bringing you another episode of Houston Business Radio. Today's guest is Derek Zahler, managing partner at Linden Brock Equity Partners and also founder of C6B. We might have to talk about that later. Derek is a strategist and innovator with more than a decade of experience aligning people, ideas, and resources to drive sustainable growth. I would be remiss if I did not tell you that he is a former U.S. Army Special Forces soldier, and he brings the discipline and adaptability of his military background to the business world, where he builds partnerships, unlocks opportunities, and helps organizations navigate complex challenges. Derek, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Trisha. That was awesome.
Feels a little formal based on where I think we're going to take our talk today. All right. So first, tell us a little bit more about Derek.
Yeah, I'm just a guy. I like a whole bunch of stuff, and as it concerns this program, I'm really a green energy transition person. I like looking on the fringes for solutions, and I like building teams. So I like being a part of the mix. I like being a part of what's new, and generally just being a part of the discussion.
Yeah, I love that. All right, Derek. The subtitle under your name says "Hooray for everything." Tell me more.
Hooray for everything. Yeah, that's I actually stole it. I don't know if any of your viewers are Simpsons viewers, but a long time ago, I used to watch a lot of The Simpsons. I thought it was hilarious. I saw the band Hooray for Everything. When I left the military, I thought, you know what? I'm going to kind of take that on as a little bit of a positive thing. It's one of my LLCs, and it just kind of reminds me that, a lot of what we do, you should have a smile on your face when you do it. So hooray for everything. I think it's just kind of a fun way to live in your business life.
I love that. You bring such positive energy, whether it was you and I on the telephone or here on video. So, all right, we're going to have a little fun. You were sharing with me before we started recording today something that's really stuck with you that you didn't in the beginning really realize how important it might be as you brought it on this journey with you. So give us some backstory on So What?
So what? Yeah. So when I first joined a team in the Special Forces community in first group, my boss looked at me before our first deployment. He said, Derek, you need to really answer only one question when you're doing something is, so what? And at the time, I thought it was an infinitely stupid thing. I go, what do you mean, like, so what? You're my boss. I'm in the Army. I'm just going to do what you say. But it kind of stuck with me. It hung around. It rented space in my head. And as I thought about it, I go, you know what? That's actually a pretty valid question. So when you think about, hey, we're going out to training, and you ask yourself, so what? And then you're like, okay, well, I want to be a better soldier, and you're like, so what? You kind of almost feel like a toddler, but you arrive at a more meaningful reason, right? And I think you can kind of pull that apart and say, are we doing the right thing? Am I doing what's good for me, or what I believe in? And the so what is what got me there. So it's one of these kind of small, silly stories that stuck with me while I was in the military. It's kind of guided me strangely, afterwards. So what became kind of a fun, it's like a hooray for everything. You look at it, you're like, oh, that's silly. Hooray for everything. But you start pulling it apart, you find your own meaning in it, and it makes me smile, and it brings a little more introspection to the process.
I love that. And to you as a human. And by the way, I love The Simpsons. I grew up watching The Simpsons too. Simpsons are awesome. Hooray for everything. Can we talk a little bit about the work that you're doing? I know that you mentor, you're involved in a couple of different organizations. You are a partner at Linden Brock Equity Partners. Just give us, Derek, an overview of what you do in your businesses and the organizations you belong to.
Yeah, I think the there'd be one common thread, which is we look for more non-obvious answers. Lindenbrock is kind of what ties everything together, whether it's looking on the periphery for sustainable agricultural projects or processes. If we're involved in an investment banking transaction, to be pulled in as a a senior advisor and say, hey, we think we understand this, and here's how we
Mhm.
look at things. So we like to look at things from a different angle. The name Lindenbrock or Liedenbrock, depending on the translation, comes from Jules Verne, by the way, from Journey to the Center of the Earth. For those of you that have read that way back when, but the professor who actually goes to the center of the Earth is kind of this weirdo that kind of dabbles on the edges of things. And so we thought, that's great. We're going to look on the outside and try to take a slightly different perspective. Whether it is C6B, whether it's again investment banking, or it's just an infrastructure project. So we like to test our assumptions and just say, hey, maybe we don't know what we think we know.
Yeah. Okay. So thinking about this, who who is it that you normally engage with, Derek? Who would you be looking to, like, what connections are you looking for?
Yeah. So primarily, it's I'll say everybody, right? But our space is sort of rooted in the financial industry and the investment banking. Not a lot of people really understand that, but if we can break it down in really simple terms, it's any business that's looking to get bigger or sell, right?
Mhm.
And it's a lot like selling a house, a little more complicated, but we like partnering with those folks. Whether you're saying, "Hey, I'm trying to sell my plumbing business, I'm trying to bolt on something that's more renewable, like biochar," it's that's where we step in, and we're not here to compete with real big investment, no J.P. Morgans or Goldman Sachs, but more on the beginning side and saying, hey, if you need a partner, you need a friend, you just need some advice, someone to translate the unknown. That's kind of where we start.
Yeah, and you tend to like this green space, right?
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So can we talk a little bit about that? Listen, you published an article just a few days ago
Mm.
called Hunting Unicorns with a Canteen. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, again, it's one of those kind of poking around the periphery. I love it. It's structured water, by the way. So for those of you who don't want to go to the it's like a 3-minute read, but it talks about something that the health and wellness industry has been exploring. It's called structured water. And a lot of people believe there's benefits to it that we can sort of explain, a lot of heuristics, because it's extremely expensive and time consuming to really prove that structured water exists. But I love it, and I think it kind of it's a vehicle, it's an idea that opens my mind, saying, hey, if there's a
Mhm.
possibility, and that so what is, hey, it could help, it really benefit a lot of people, then there's good cause to go after it. There's good cause to engage it, or at least open your mind to it. And I think if we can approach a lot of the problems like that, um, you know, hooray for everything, all together. So
I love that. If you guys are looking for the article, it is a very short read. It's on Derek's LinkedIn page. If you're looking for Derek on LinkedIn, it's Derek Zahler is his last name. You guys can check out that article and a few others that might be of interest to you. Um, so we just talked about the green space, but I know that you're also involved in traditional industries, mining, pipeline operations, if I'm not mistaken,
yep,
right?
yep.
So how do you balance these legacy industries with these new disruptive opportunities as you're moving through your journey?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So I'll start with mining. Mining is so if we want to chat about it, I worked for a very large coal mining company a number of years ago, and coal mining is literally and figuratively a dirty word. It's one of those things that's immediately polarizing, and it's kind of it was my kind of attempt, my education, to say, hey, things aren't that simple, right? Coal isn't horrible,
Mm,
but you kind of have to know where you came from to know where you're going. So, how do you reconcile that with, pipelining? Pipelining was an infrastructure business that I had. It's still something I care deeply about. I think in this country, infrastructure is a very difficult problem to solve. But where this all comes together, and where Lindenbrock and everything else kind of ties into this, is you're always looking to move, right? Nothing's great in a static form, right? I think a lot of
Mhm.
your military viewers can appreciate the adage. You say, "Hey, look, we can go left around the hill, we can go right around the hill, we can go up and over the hill." But the one thing we do know that if we stand still, we're going to get killed. So it's always been my thought: you got to take these things and start keep moving, right? Like
Mhm.
a lot of people, I have young kids. They are my motivation. They are the reason I push for the green transition into what's more efficient, what's cleaner. I think every parent wants to leave the world in a slightly better state than we found it, and give them the same opportunities, if not more, than what we had. So that kind of at the back of my mind drives, like, how can we get better, right? We can't just accept that infrastructure or material processing will stay the same. I think we all think we realize it's not gonna fly even in the near future. But that's where my mind goes. So it's not I don't really exclude either legacy or kind of old spaces, because I think there's always ways to renew and ways to introduce ideas and people and energy to the uh
Mhm.
to the process. Say, hey, let's at least keep talking. I know it's a difficult world we live in now to have real discussion or discourse, but again, we try, right? And that's all we can do.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So, can we dig into that just a little more? Like the whole idea of aligning resources. We talked a little bit about that, but aligning people and ideas and being a leader. How does this all come together when we do have such, in some cases, conflicting ideas about these resources? Yeah.
Yeah. uh Fantastic question. I don't know really has a great answer, but I think again, leadership plays the probably the most pivotal role there, right? I mean, in a world
Mhm.
that's growing more polarized, and a little more confused, I think leadership is probably the core tenet there, right? I mean, whether it's education saying, hey, look, we hire for like the enthusiasm, we hire for like the personality, and we train you to get there. I think that's kind of it, again,
Mhm.
maybe cliche, but I think that's it's true, right? We all have to learn something new, whether that's integrating AI, learning that we might not have enough lithium on Earth to supply the current battery usage as it's projected, or to kind of look at the infrastructure. We're talking about plumbing and saying, hey, look, these are some really old pipes, and water is kind of an important thing in this world. Um, so yeah, I think when you get down to it, the leadership and the team component is sort of everything. And I think we can see that in cultures that where businesses really thrive and saying, hey, like, we're not really excluding, we're not compartmentalizing these thought leaders or thought contributors. I think the idea that leadership will kind of prevail, and yeah, it's difficult, right? I don't say that as someone like, hey, follow me. But I think everyone can appreciate good and bad leaders. So you started with the so what. I got in there
Mhm.
thinking, man, my team sergeant maybe doesn't know his ass from his elbow, but like, but there was something there, right? And I was, a new
Yeah.
young guy, and it just took time. And so, if we can have patience, and
Mhm.
that, I think that's again, it's my hope. I know maybe I sound like a little bit of a bleeding heart, but I think it works for everything that's out there.
Mhm. I agree. And, hiring for attitude versus knowledge and skills is something we could all learn, right? And bringing people in who say hooray for everything, like you,
Yeah.
right? It's like good.
Yeah.
You can't teach a good attitude, I guess is my point. You want to hire someone who comes with some, right?
Yeah.
Above the line
Yeah,
thinking.
that's a great one, because one of my side hobbies is demography, right? And I think we're in a space where you got the Xers are turning the older ones are turning 60, 65, and people shaking fingers at Gen Z, and you're kind of framing it, right? And so, but if you hire for addicts and you say, hey, we're going to bring all these people along, whether you're at the end of your career, beginning of your career, have technical skills or not, I think that's you're riding this wave of employees, leaders, yeah, hire for attitude, right? Like, bring them along, right? It's easy to beat people down and keep them out of the party. It's hard to bring them along.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything else we can teach them. Knowledge and skills can be taught all day long.
That's
Yeah.
right.
All right. So besides the uh, one thing that we already talked about that you learned from the military, what other lessons or even skills did you bring with you as you came out of the military and moved and transitioned into the world outside the military?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the first one I know almost every military member veteran can appreciate. I think patience took that one out, right? I think we
Mm.
transition, and we have a knee jerk to have no patience, even though patience was kind of like beaten into all of us. Like you will stand here and wait just to get
So
the
true.
sign to be more waiting. So patience I think is a huge one. Right, if we can be like, "Hey, look, we would wait on a tarmac just to wait for more orders to find out that we were just gonna be moved to the other side of the tarmac and wait." Like, there should be that part of us that are like, "Hey, we're used to waiting." So the patience of all this is, I think that's like, like, bring that to the table, like, breathe deep, find some peace in the moment, and it's patience.
Mm.
And I think the next part is another thing that all veterans probably have in their beaten into their DNA, which is sort of adaptability, right? Like knowing
Mm.
when to pivot, right? I talk a lot to friends, family, different audiences, saying, attrition's real, right? And we love to say, no, quit, don't quit, don't quit. That's sort of easy, right? We know the world isn't just as easy as like never quit. I think it's knowing when to quit or when to pivot. I think a lot of veterans can understand that, like, hey, look, this is a dead end, right? We must pivot. You're not quitting on the mission. You're just maybe quitting on this path, and knowing how and when and so what uh, to quit. So I think those two, I don't know, we'll call them pillars. Really, that was my big takeaway: patience and knowing when to quit. Right, not too early, not too late. Not an
Mhm.
easy answer, but I think we all got there.
Yeah. Well, and I think we know how to get stuff done, right? So
Yeah.
I like to call it DSD. We just get stuff done, and
Mhm.
not always the way everyone else wants us to, but we're gonna get it done for sure.
Yeah. Hey, if we have to dig a hole and we don't have a shovel, we'll find a way to dig a hole, right?
It's okay. Yeah, we'll figure it out. You're very involved, or just in our conversations and looking at your profile, involved in mentorship. And I believe
Mm,
that mentorship is very important. I also heard you talking about really digging into how are all of these generations that are in the workforce now going to get along and use
mm,
each other's knowledge and experience and expertise to make the world a better place. So let's talk about mentorship. Number
mm.
one, um, did you have great mentors as you were growing up, if you will, and finding the place that you are now? And how are you mentoring others to receive the same type of support?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a ton of I have a handful of great mentors, of a handful of shaky ones. But my early career was actually spent in athletics. So if I reflect a early young Derek, um, just a lot of football, a lot of baseball, wrestling, these kind of things. So coaches were my real mentors. They taught me a lot. They spent time with me, and you could almost see it reflected in, well, I could see it reflected in my own actions, how I treated other teammates when I was older or younger. And you went through the process, right? I think just so everyone knows, I'm a young Xer, I'm an old millennial, depending on where that is. So we call it hazing, but you went through those like initiations where like the breakdown and then build back up, right? The military does that, there's a
Yep.
formula, clearly. Um,
Mhm.
but there's also, there's a level of attention to the subject, right? So it's such a interesting thing to apply. Like when I was young, oh, that's how they were doing it. That's how they built me up. When I was when I was at my weakest, when I was at my strongest, how did that resonate with me? I think that was extremely important for me, and just saying, hey, can I pass that along? Not that I know. you know, I don't know a lot about a lot of things, but I do know how it felt, and yeah, I know how special forces treated it. Um, so I try to kind of collate those experiences, saying, hey, this is what I learned. Can we do this in business, right? Again, can we hire for
Mhm.
attitude and then train for success? Um, you know, ideas are ideas, right? When we want to start putting some rubber to the road, then we can get down there. So yeah, that's I think it's an enormous part of it. I mean, I still look to some mentors I have now. I'm fortunate. My father's still alive. He's one of my strongest mentors and strongest advocates I've
Mm.
ever had. So he'll be the first one I go to, but I do have a handful that you know, younger and older. So
Yeah, I love that. So, for those that are listening today that say, "Gosh, I don't know if I really have a mentor. Where do I find one?" What advice would you give to folks who don't really feel like they've got that strong support system right now?
yeah, that's a fantastic question. But we are in an information age, right? I mean, we met each other through LinkedIn, and it's just going to a party, being willing to put yourself out there, saying, "Hey, I like your work. Can we chat?" I think that's the easiest way. I mean, there's tons of thought leaders out there, especially in the interwebs. So, LinkedIn's a great spot, for business. But if you're more connecting locally, there's going to be people or institutions or anything you admire. Just, raise your hand, put yourself out there. Most people want to help. I would say most people do have that sense that I'm trying to do good as well as doing well. So, um, yeah, you just got to have that ability to stand up and raise your hand.
Yeah, absolutely. All you got to do is ask, because there are people
Yeah.
out there who want to be in your room. Now, be careful about who you let in your room, because, well, there are those
Hmm.
people you don't want there in the first place. And they're really hard to kick out if you let them in your room
True
to begin
story.
with.
True story. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. All right. As we get to the back end of our conversation, Derek, we've talked about all of the hats that you've worn over the last only few years. I wouldn't say several, because you're not really that old. Soldier, entrepreneur, strategist, mentor. If you could leave the listeners with one piece of advice about creating sustainable success in business and even in life, what would it be?
Um, Openness. I would say open your mind, open your heart, type of thing. Um, I
Mhm.
think sustained success, sustained growth, what do you want to talk, sustained happiness. I think comes from opening yourself. And I know that's a silly thing. I know I'm probably walking down the Brene Brown like vulnerability um, path, but it really is true. If you're open to it, new ideas, new people, I think you're gonna be fine, right? If you can look at your team now and analyze, like, hey, what's going on? What's happening? Where do we want to be with an open mind and an open heart? You're going to find people that want to come in. You're going to find those pieces that support the trajectory you're on, and the mission. And I think that's key, right? It's not without its road bumps or setbacks, but the openness, that's what I found really helped me, to saying, hey, like, I don't know everything. I won't know everything, but I'm open to listening. So there you are.
Okay, so it strikes me that I have one more question. I know I said I was
Let's
done, but
do it.
I this this really came to mind for me because I was having this conversation earlier today about lead by example. And when you're leading difficult people, sometimes leading by example doesn't feel like it's working. So, talk to me about leadership and leading by example.
Yeah, I think leading by example uh, comes from a bit of self-awareness, a little bit
Mm,
of emotional intelligence. I think when you understand what you're good at and what you're not good at, what you think you understand, what you don't understand, communicating that is probably should be at the top of the list, right? Because
mm,
people, there's a bit of the desire to follow a flawless, beautiful, never, omniscient type of leader, but I think we all know that's not feasible. It's not happening. So the communication's like, hey, here's who I am. I'm in this position. I'm setting the course, right? Understanding the difference between the strategic or the leadership role and the tactical execution. I
Mm,
think it's also important to kind of delineate. I think everyone who's been in the military understands the difference between the strategy and the tactical roadmap. That gets buy-in, right? Transparency in a lot of ways gets buy-in in a way to communicate that belief and saying, hey, let's underscore the strength, play to our strengths and away from our weaknesses. I think we're going to do well as a team. That is close to the bridge as I can make with dealing with those difficult those moments.
I like that, but it all rolls into this sustainable success, if I can talk, in knowing, going back to what you said earlier about being able to pivot or know when to say no or know when to say yes, right?
Mm,
And as leaders, we have to make those hard decisions, and sometimes we do have to be very transparent. And hard conversations happen, whether you
yeah.
like them or not, right? They always happen. Okay, circling back around as we finish up with Hooray for everything.
Mm,
And do you have the answer to your question, so what?
I think I do. I think it's taken me a long while, uh, but the so what is it's got to be meaningful to you. It's got to make you happy. It's got to feel right. I know that in this day and age, we don't have a lot of time during the day to sit and be with ourselves truly in a quiet manner. But I
Mm.
think if you want to get a little woo woo, I think your higher self knows, right? You're like, this does serve me. I feel good about this. You've gone down that path, and or it doesn't. And I think the so what should be a lot of your guiding light.
Okay, this was awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I'm so glad that I talked you into coming on the show with me because I'm pretty sure I talked you into it.
This is wonderful. I
This
love
is
I love the opportunity. It's been great, Tricia.
It's been fantastic. You guys, if you want to connect with Derek, LinkedIn is a great place to find him. That's how I found him. It's DerekZahler. Derek, again, thank you so much for being with me today.
I love it. Appreciate you.
It's all the time we have for our show today. You guys, if you want more information about Derek, please go connect with him. And of course, all of the places that you can find him will be in the show notes. You can just point and click. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. And until next time.